This episode is sponsored by Days of Wonder. To episode 29 of the Board Game Geek podcast, where we geek out about board games, the mechanisms behind them, and the people who create them. I'm your host, Candice Harris, and I'm so thrilled to be here today with one of the people who create the board games, Elizabeth Hargrave, the designer of Wingspan, Tussie Mussie, Mariposas, and most recently, the Fox Experiment. How are you doing today, Elizabeth?
Hi, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Of course, anytime. I always love chatting with you, and I'm still to this day forever happy and grateful that you were my first guest for Cardboard Creations.
Oh, that's right.
Remember that feels like it was like forever ago.
Yeah.
And I've definitely learned and grown a lot in that space and just every space, but that was really, really cool. And, you know, doing that episode with you and just being a part of the board game scene when Wingspan came out was really, really just exciting. Cause I still remember I pre-ordered from Stonemaier and I got my copy early. And
you got your copy when no one else could get there.
Yes. And everybody wanted to play Wingspan with me, you know, like, because I was one of the few people who had a copy of it. And I just remember playing it so much and just enjoying it. And I'm so it just makes me so happy to see how successful it has been and just continues to be. And you know, I have not nearly played all of the expansions or anything, but I'm like, every time I see one, I'm like, that's awesome. Beautiful cards. Love it. All these like different, you know, component upgrades that people are making for it. Yeah, it's really awesome. And, you know, obviously you have a lot of games out now. But anyway, I'm rambling on. What's new with you?
What is new with me? It's fall here in Washington, D.C. Been enjoying the leaves changing and trying to stay warm.
Nice. Is it getting pretty chilly?
Yeah, up and down. Although later this week it's going to be like 80 degrees again. So, you know.
Weird.
Change.
Yeah.
Flux.
Yeah. It is. Yeah, that's crazy because like I'm from Pennsylvania originally, and yeah, back in the day, this time of year, it would be, getting pretty chilly, you know, especially at night, not 80 degrees.
Right. Or some days it's both. Like we just had a frost.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yes, anyway. And like, good segue here, because considering it's almost that time of year where a lot of people gather with family and friends for the holidays and just to kind of close out the year. Today, we're going to discuss some of our favorite family-friendly games that we like to break out on such occasions where we're around people who maybe don't ordinarily play games as much as often and as much as we do, but they do enjoy playing games at gatherings like this. So there's definitely, like, to me, a certain type of game that I'll bring out on these occasions and some things that I won't. You know, you don't want to like you know, you don't want to break out too many things that are too complex for people to figure out. That's what I've learned.
Yeah.
When it comes to like family and people who don't play a lot of board games.
It can go very badly very quickly.
Yeah, and I was actually like, to make my list of games to talk about, I was looking at my shelf and I was like, ooh, I don't really, or at least I don't keep on my main shelf many of the games that fit this category. But I do own a fair amount because, yeah, you know, I play with a lot of different level gamers, and it's good to have something that works for all different levels of experience, you know?
Yep. And for bigger groups sometimes too.
Yes.
Like sometimes you want to close out or start up with something that, 8 people can play at a time, and that's a totally different type of game too.
Exactly. Yeah. So anyway, before we start talking about family-friendly games we enjoy, I'd love to hear what you've been playing lately, Elizabeth. So let's jump into fresh plays.
Yeah, so on the topic of fall, I just got my copy of Leaf, which I backed on Kickstarter. It's by Tim Eisner from Weird City Games. And it is a lovely game where it's like tile placement, but instead of tiles that have, that are hexes or squares, they're actually cutouts of leaf shapes.
Oh!
And the different leaves have different numbers of points on them, right? So like a maple leaf has 5 points and a tulip tree leaf has 4 points, and plus the stem, I guess, is another point of attachment. And so you're placing the leaves down in the shared play space, and they have to be touching point to point.
Oh.
And whatever other leaf points you're touching with the leaf that you just placed, those are the actions that you get to take.
Interesting.
So if you're touching, 2 reds and a yellow, that means you get to take 2 of the red action and 1 of the yellow action. It's really interesting mechanic. And you end up with this beautiful board in front of you that's just like a bunch of leaves that have fallen on the autumn forest floor.
What a perfect game for this time of year, too.
Yeah.
That's cool. I actually, so I remember seeing the cover for this one, and if I recall, the art's really beautiful.
Yeah. It's a really pretty game.
That's cool. And yeah, it sounds interesting. Some of what you were saying initially was like reminding me of like photosynthesis or something. Maybe I'm just thinking about trees.
Yeah, it's not nearly as cutthroat as photosynthesis.
Okay. A little lighter.
I mean, you can block people a little bit. You're going to try and take the good spots, right? Where you can get 3 or 4 or 5 corners to match up all at once. And then the person after you can't have that spot. So there's, competition in that way, but you're not like blocking people.
Cool. So it's rather chill.
In photosynthesis. And your player pieces are little mushrooms. So bonus points for that.
Nice. I know you love that. That's awesome.
And you have a little squirrel that's going up a tree. That's one of the actions, is like you're advancing on this little track up the tree.
Cool.
It's adorable across the board.
Awesome. So that is
and thinky too.
Oh, good. I love that. I love that. Yeah, like games that are
cute.
Games that are kind of like lighter, but they make you think a bit.
Yeah.
And that have squirrels. That's always good. So that is Leaf.
Yes.
I have recently been playing or trying to play through the games I picked up at Essen. And one of the games I was really excited. It was on my top 5 Spiel 23 anticipation list. I got the opportunity to play it last week, and it is called Kutná Hora, the City of Silver. So this is, again, a 2023 Essen release. It's from Czech Games Edition, CGE, and the designers are, I'm going to try to get these names right, Andrej Bistron, Peter Kaslava, Pavel Jarosz. Not bad. Maybe. But it's a 2 to 4 player game, and it's a city building game with a unique economy and like supply and demand system. It's basically historically based because I guess in 1260, the discovery of silver led to a big silver boom in what is called present day Kutná Hora, and it attracted people from all over Europe there because of the silver. And in the game, you're basically going to be like building up the city and mining ore. And all these things you're doing are increasing the population of the city, and you're going to be like building buildings, and that's also just going to shift supply and demand a bit. One of the things that's unique about this game is that while there are 6 resources, you don't actually ever have any resources. All you have is money. So they have these card trays for this supply and demand system, which will show you how much money a given resource is. So at the beginning of the game, I think 1 wood is $2, and I don't remember the actual name of the currency, but 2 money, I'll say. So if I need to build something that costs 4 wood, I have to spend 8 money. I don't ever actually have wood tokens or pieces or anything like that. So that's kind of a key concept of the game. But the other thing is each player has 3 guilds that you belong to. So, and they're, depending on the player count, you'll overlap 1 or 2 of those with maybe 1 other player. And that's going to like dictate what kind of buildings you can build and which ones you can't, because you can only build buildings that match one of your guilds. The other thing is the main action system in the game is card driven. So you have a hand of action cards that have 2 parts. Each card has 2 parts, 2 different actions on it, 1 at the top, 1 at the bottom. So on your first turn of the round, you're going to play 2 cards and play 2 actions. And when it comes back to your turn, again, you're going to play 2 more cards and take 2 actions. And then the last time it comes around to you, you're only going to play 1 card. And you have 6 cards. So there's 1 card you're not going to play. But the actions are very straightforward in this game. Like you can plot. There's a section of the board where you're building the city. So you can just like put one of your pieces down and say, I'm going to eventually build something there, put a little plot token. One of the things that's interesting with that is if there are no buildings on the board, you can plot anywhere you want and it costs 5 money. After people start building, then you have to plot orthogonally adjacent to one of the buildings if there's a space. And if there's not, you go back to like you could plot anywhere. But the cost is based on the building that you're placing around. And if you're adjacent to 2, you have to play the more expensive one. Then another action you can do is called rights. And then this is where you're actually taking a building tile from this like tile market. The cool thing with this is when you take rights to a building, the far left column, so there will be 3 in the far left column, 3 options, they all cost 1 money. Then the next column, anything you take from there costs 1 patent. And again, the patent will depend on the cost of the patent right now. So it could be $4, it could be $6, it just depends. And then further
those prices changing based on what's happening in the game. So it's like a supply and demand kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. So now when after I have rights I can build that's another action. So I build that on the board where I have a plot. And now all the things on that building are going to tell me, hey, maybe population's going up. So you're going to shift cards on this like population little card slot thingy. I don't even know how to describe it. It's like a tilted up board where you have a deck of cards that are kind of shifting these values. So like maybe population goes up 2. So I shift 2 cards on the population side. And then now that might mean, cost of wood just got more expensive. But it all depends on like which types of buildings you're building. Then there's a mining action. So below the main city, of course, below ground, you have this dark section of the board where you can add these mine tiles. And that's really cool because that is going to increase the amount of ore in the city, and also which is going to make the price of silver fluctuate, the value of silver fluctuate. And both of these areas, the city area and the mining area, have in-game scoring implications. The city area, you have these different symbols on the top left corner of each building. And the more you can match as you build out the city, regardless of it's your building or my building touching each other, you'll get points at the end of the game. And then for the mining area, some of the mining tiles have stars on them. So there's an area majority scoring for those based on each row in the mine. But the amount of points awarded depends on how many stars end up in a row, and then how many of your miners you have on those tiles, to see who gets the most. So that's another thing you can do. Another action is just gaining income. So every time you build something, not every time, but most times, you're going to be increasing your production in these different slots. So if I'm in the, we'll say the wood guild, and I build a wood building, I'm probably increasing my wood production. So when I take income, like maybe my wood production's up to 4 now, I'm going to multiply 4 times whatever the value of wood is right now. But I'm going to do that for all of my little production levels to get income. And money is very important, because I will tell you a story about one of my games shortly. But, making sure you have your production numbers up a little bit so that you can get income when you need it, because money is very important in this game. That is key. But it's also just really neat because the players are driving all of this, depending on which buildings we choose to build and when. And there are all sorts of just like really interesting implications from what other people are doing, even though it's like this game is so smooth, and I feel like it's so easy to teach. And, and when we're playing, it's just like, okay, I do 2 actions, you do 2 actions, do 2 actions. The end of the round is very like really simple. Like you pay taxes, and at the end of the later rounds, you do some scoring, and then you move on. So everything just feels really smooth about this game. The last action I didn't mention is there's a St. Barbara action, which I keep calling Santa Barbara. But you're like building this cathedral, and there's a whole thing where you're flipping these tiles over, getting some benefit. And there's a whole timing element to that. If someone does it before you, they might trigger a benefit. Or some of the buildings you build might automatically, like the city is building part of the cathedral, not a player. So there's all these different things happening, these levers that players are pulling based on what they're doing. And then again, I mentioned taxes a little bit. So there's certain buildings are going to make taxes go up. So at the end of the round, you need to pay taxes or you lose reputation. And you have this little reputation track, which can get you benefits if you can work your way up it, or it can hurt you a little bit if you don't have a good reputation. But yeah, in a 4-player game, you play 5 rounds. In a 6 or a 3-player game, I think in 2-player games, you play 6 rounds. And it moves quite well. And one of my favorite things about it is my first 2 games were both 3-player games. And the scores of the first game were 66, 66, 68.
Oh my gosh.
The second game was 60, 60, and 63. Completely played out differently, but somehow they both ended super tight. And I will say this is a game where during the game, maybe our scores got up to like 20 or so, but like a lot of it is that end game scoring. And then I didn't mention these patricians, but these patricians, you can, certain public buildings you'll build will get these patricians in a pool, and you can, when you take income, you can spend $10 to place one of those, and that's going to score for everyone for like certain conditions. So that factors in scoring at the end of the last 3 rounds of the game. But then end game scoring kind of is just like really, really exciting, because it's a nail biter every single time. It's like, oh my God. And then when you find out 2 points, all you needed was 2 points. Right. Like, what if I did this differently or this happened, So that is one of the things that I really, really love about it. My 4-player game of this, which I would say like I might like it I probably like it best at 4. But I made a crucial mistake, and it was bad. It was bad. Like I kind of spent too much money before getting my production up. And then I was just like, uh-oh, like what am I going to do? Because I can't afford anything. Nobody's buying rights to these buildings to shift this so I can actually afford it in the cheap slot. Like there were all these things that just kind of came crumpling down, almost in the way of a splatter game or something where you make a mistake and you're just like, I'm out of it. And it did not feel good. I'm not gonna lie. It did not feel good, but it was definitely a learning moment for me where I was like, okay, don't do that, Candice. Like, don't just try to keep mining and get stars. Make sure you're actually building up your production so that when you take income, you have enough money to be able to do stuff in this game. So, but even with that, like this, this bad game I played, I still had 34 points at the end. And the winner of that game was 52. Second place was 50. And third place was 41. And it was from someone who's not like that experienced as a gamer. So I still think like it's really like exciting endings to this game. I can't wait to play it more. Like I feel like I keep craving it. Again, it's like so smooth to play. I'm fascinated by how the players drive everything and how every game has played out differently. Like there was one game where everybody started building in the mines heavily. And so I was like, this is so weird because it's making the economy work a lot differently than when people are focused on city, building up the city more so, or kind of doing both. And it depends on what guild you're in. And you get to like draft your set of guilds at the beginning. And when you first play, you're going to be like, I don't know. I don't care which ones to take. But now, especially after that game where I like did awfully, I'm going to think differently about which set of guilds that I pick in the beginning if I have the choice to kind of do it easier or earlier in the round. But anyway, I really have been digging it. The components are great. They use these like rewood components instead of plastic, and it's like recycled wood or something, but they feel really good. They look cool. The tiles are not like, they just feel premium. I love like the art. The board is this like black with this silver kind of vibe, and then the pieces are almost like pastel colored. It just like looks great. The cards are a little thin, but I guess like you can't spend money, a lot of money on everything. So I just sleeved them and it's fine. But the tight scoring of it is just, it's so good. And it makes me want to keep coming back to it. So that is Kutná Hora. Have you heard of that one yet, Elizabeth?
I had seen some buzz about it from Essen, but I haven't laid eyes on it yet.
Yeah. And this was one that was actually at the gathering. And I remember seeing it and just being like, I don't know. I'm not in a rush to play it. But now I'm kicking myself that I didn't try it earlier. And now I'm like, I got to get the metal coins. So I am all about Kutná Hora at this point.
Awesome.
What else have you been playing lately?
All right, so this is shameless self-promotion, but also actually how I have been spending my time.
Nice.
I've been doing a lot of blind playtesting for Undergrove and also testing the solo game for Undergrove, which is sort of the last piece that we put together because the whole game had to be locked down before we could figure out how it works solo.
And for people who don't know what Undergrove is...
Yeah. So this is my next game. It's going to be on Kickstarter from November 7th through early December. And it is about the fact that trees and mushrooms trade resources underground.
So cool.
So you're playing from the point of view of a Douglas fir tree. And then there are a bunch of mushroom tiles, which are all actual species. Every tile is different, and they're all mushrooms that have this symbiotic relationship with Douglas fir. And so your goal is to get a bunch of seedlings out, right? As a tree, your goal is to get seedlings that are like have good associations with different mushrooms that are worth lots of points, and to get them sort of built up. And the way you're building up in this game is you're moving carbon around. So all the carbon originally comes from the players and the fact that their trees can photosynthesize. That's the only way that you can get carbon into the game, is that you have to like take a turn to sort of pause and make carbon. And then it's the currency that you're paying to the mushroom tiles where you have one of your pieces on the board. You're paying carbon to a mushroom, and the mushroom is giving you other resources back. And the other resources are things like nitrogen and phosphorus and potassium.
Cool.
And so there's a lot of cube conversion kind of feel to it of like, okay, I'm stopping to make carbon and now I'm turning that carbon into other things. And then those things I can turn into new seedlings or more roots, which give me relationships with more mushrooms and points at the end, maybe. And then the other thing you have to spend resources on is moving the carbon around and getting it up onto your seedlings to grow them up into little tree standees that you can put out once you've got enough carbon.
That's cool.
Yeah, so every turn is just one action. There's a kind of interesting thing also of an economy of the mushrooms are in 4 different categories and you have one token for each category and you use them up. So you can't keep going back to the same mushroom over and over. When you stop to make your carbon, that you are also resetting sort of that mechanism and getting access to all the mushrooms again. Or all the ones where you have roots. So it's a very spatial game, and it's in a shared board, so it feels super different from other stuff that I've worked on before. In that sense, like it really matters where you're putting your pieces, which corner of which mushrooms, and it's a pretty tight action economy.
Nice. Sounds sweet. So you've been like blind testing.
That would be a whole different process. Yeah. So which for people who don't know, once you've got the rule book all written and at this point it's all laid out too, but we're just double checking that, like, if I give this rule book as we hope it will appear in the box to a set of players, can they figure out how to play the game, or do they still have questions, and where is it confusing and that kind of thing. So we're working on that. And also, in addition to the rule book, we've got, like we did for Wingspan with the Swift Start guides that help new people like take their first 4 turns. We did that for this game too, which was a lot harder to figure out because it's so interactive, and so like figuring out how to make it work at that particular thing work at 2 players, 3 players, or 4 players, so that like players 1 and 2, those instructions don't rely on anything that we have players 3 and 4 do.
Man.
I
could see where that would be more challenging than something where you're building your own tableau.
Right. So I've been trying to get in a bunch of playtests with those to make sure that they work, which I think everything's good. And then, of course, the first day after it delivers, people will catch stuff that we couldn't catch somewhere. But,
you're trying. You're trying. Yeah.
And it's been really interesting. I don't play a lot of solo games, but we did the solo game in-house. Mark sort of started on it, and I came in and tweaked it, and in consultation actually with my friend David Studley, who works for the Automa Factory, who's local here. So he played it a little bit for us and gave us some advice. And I think that's working really nicely too. I don't have a lot to compare it to because I don't play solo, but it feels tight. And like you have to worry about where the positions are getting taken up on the board and things like that. But it's still, it's a system of cards that are making pieces for your AI opponent show up on the board, and also making new mushrooms come out and taking carbon off the board, putting carbon on the board, just as if you're playing against other people. So it's been fun to see that all evolve.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. And as someone who like doesn't play, and I do play solo games, but I'm saying from your perspective, that's a good test too, to see how much you're enjoying the solo mode as someone who doesn't like typically play solo games. If you're enjoying it, then that's like, thumbs up, a good starting place at least. But then you could also feed it to people who play solo a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's awesome. I am really excited to like hear more about this and see when the it's Kickstarter
starting November 7th.
Cool. And it's called Undergrove
from AEG.
Nice. So another game that I got from Essen. Oh, and I meant to mention I received Kutná Hora as a review copy. So I did not buy it. And I also did not buy this next game I'm going to mention. So take that for what it's worth. But I do like to try to mention that. But the next game I'm going to talk about is one that I had seen the cover of like on the Spiel preview list. And I was kind of curious about it. And then I heard Rado talk about it. And I was like, ooh, that sounds like really interesting. And the game is called Arborea, or it could be Arborea. I don't know. I think it's Arborea. I'm going to go with that. But it's designed by Danny Garcia. And Danny Garcia, I don't know if you've heard of him, but he has just like, it seems like he came out of nowhere because he had a release with Board and Dice at Gen Con called Barcelona. And that was the first time I feel like many of us heard Danny Garcia's name. And then at Essen, this game Arborea, which is from Alley Cat Games, that came out. And then Board and Dice has another, I think, Danny Garcia game, and maybe Devere also. I don't know, but like, yeah, Danny Garcia is blowing up with lots of games. And I haven't actually played Barcelona, so this is the first game that I've played by him. And it's 1 to 5 players, and it takes place in the world of Arborea, where there was this cataclysmic event that destroyed all of its like former fertile lands and scared away all the creatures living on them. So in the game, we're spirits, and we're guiding these villagers or our workers to heal and regrow the landscape, and we're trying to basically attract the creatures back, and we're building up our own personal little ecosystem with these cards that have different patterns of different types of kind of like terrain. And so part of the game is you're building up your ecosystem with these cards, and cards can be either placed adjacent to other cards in your ecosystem, or you can overlap some of them. But then you're trying to attract these creatures and put them so they intersect with 4 squares on your ecosystem, and hopefully 4 squares that are going to like make them score points, like 4 ecosystem squares that they want to live in, like the type of terrain that they like. So there are, I think, 6 different creatures in the game, and they all have like end game scoring conditions. Like maybe the red creature, if they're placed for each red square adjacent to it, they will get 3 points or something. And this is unlike Kutná Hora, where the scores go to like 50 to 60-ish. These scores, the score track for this game can go 300 plus. So just so you know what you're kind of getting into scoring wise with this one. There are no set rounds, but there's this sun track, and different effects and actions you take will trigger this sun moving forward. And when the sun hits the end of the sun track, everybody gets 2 more turns, and then you do end game scoring. So I do like that about it. I tend to like games where there aren't set number of rounds. So that's kind of cool. But your goal in the game is to have the most regeneration points, or, victory points by the end, whenever that should happen. The first thing I want to talk about with this game is the game board. The game board is very colorful and very busy looking. It almost looks like, and I'm going to quote my partner Matt here, like a giant roll and write game. Like if you look at the game board, it looks like a sheet from a roll and write, like kind of where you're like, oh, I check this off, I move up here, So once you see that, you're not going to be able to unsee it. But it's a very busy board. Everybody has their own little player board where you'll have different types of workers, so which are villagers. And during the game, you're going to be placing your villagers on these tracks. So picture the board has 4 tracks on it, and these tracks divide the board into 8 areas that have these paths, because on the north side of each track, there's one area. On the south side, there's an area. And, split the board in half. So there are 8 different areas that have these paths. So one of the things you'll be doing is deploying your workers, your villagers, onto these tracks. The tracks at the end of your turn, or each player's turn, any track where one of your workers is on, is going to shift forward. So whenever a track shifts forward, and you have these baby workers, these younglings, these regular adults, and then you have these old like white hair ones. which are elders. And any elders, if you have an elder on a track, it's going to shift forward twice. And I think thematically, my friend was saying, who demoed the game, she was saying it's like the elders have more experience, so they know how to like find shortcuts. So the tracks move faster for them. But every time a track shifts, regardless of whose turn it was and why it shifted, any player's workers on there have the option to step off. I think that's the verbiage, step off. So we were kind of making jokes like, oh, you step off. You want to step off? But you can choose to take your worker off. Usually it's like juicier rewards the longer you go, but sometimes like you want them to jump off earlier, because when they jump off, you're either going to jump off on the north side of the track or the south side, and that's going to set you up for a pilgrimage, which on your turn, you're going to be able to, with 2 of your workers, and there's a way you can possibly do more, but you're going to take them on a pilgrimage. So that means they're going to they have to be off of the track, and they'll just follow the path that they're on and trigger everything along the path, and then they come back to you. So there's like this ongoing flow of getting workers out on these different tracks, having them do these pilgrimages. So on a pilgrimage, you can do all sorts of things. So you can gain resources on certain spaces. And let me tell you about the resources, because this is like a very clever thing about this game. The resources are public. So if it's my turn, I'm doing a pilgrimage with one of my little villagers, and I generate 3 of the purple resource. The purple resource is going to go up 3, but the wooden tokens that represent this are split in half. So I'm only going to move the top half up, and this is going to be hard to picture, but basically what it's showing is an amount of victory points that I'll get at the end of my turn if I don't spend the resources I generated. So if I don't spend the resources, let's just say there are like 6 points worth of victory points there, I'll get 6 victory points. Awesome. Just for like generating resources for the whole community. And then the other half of that token is going to kind of close up to say, okay, it's the end of my turn. But now the whole, like all players have 3 purple resources. I don't have to be the one that spends it. Now it could be your turn, Elizabeth, and you can spend the resources. So
and then if I spend them, they're spent for everything.
Yes, exactly. And someone else will have to generate them. Yeah. So, and what are you spending resources on? To put out the ecosystem cards. So each ecosystem card you have has a resource cost. And that's the main way you're going to be building these cards out into your ecosystem so that you can attract the creatures and everything. So another thing you could do on the pilgrimage is you can attract creatures. So they're just, and again, you'll look on the board, you'll just follow your little villager on this path, and it tells you, like, put this creature up to the top. And usually attracting creatures is what ticks the sun up, which is the timer for the game. But then you get a little bonus, and that creature is sitting up in a queue. But again, it's public. So now maybe if I didn't set myself up where I'm doing another pilgrimage where I can now pick up that creature, someone else on their turn can pick up the creature if they do a pilgrimage on a track that allows you to actually capture the creature. So the other thing you could do is, like, around each of the 8 areas on the board there, you can add what's called a gift. And that's going to be one of the effects that you trigger on a pilgrimage sometimes, is like, trigger any gifts in this area. And it's like bonus actions. It's cool. And then the other thing, there's like one area where it's going to help you get more cards, because at some point you're going to need more cards, because you have to kind of like work this engine of like building up your ecosystem and attracting the right animals to it and capturing those animals. And there's so much like planning involved in this game. So think of something like Zulkin, if you've ever played Zulkin, you know, because the movement of the tracks can be triggered by any players, and it's gonna happen. So you're trying to like get workers out and positioned so that you can try to like run these pilgrimages to take actions efficiently. Like, I stalled out at some point and was like, I don't have any ecosystem cards, so I can't capture animals. There is a way you can capture animals and you keep them in captivity, but it's hard. It's kind of hard to get them out of captivity and onto your cards. So, and they're negative points. Anyone's in captivity by the end of the game if you haven't, gotten them into your ecosystem. So this is a game where I feel like the rules are not super hard, but the strategy is extremely challenging. And it's something where after playing it, I'm like, oh, I could do much better at this. And, that kind of like excites me. Like I want to play it again so I could try to see if I can figure out how to position my workers better to actually do more efficiently and effectively in the game. One other thing besides I talked about the resources, the public resources, and how you generate them and you can get victory points from them. But there's also on some of the tracks, and the track tiles are kind of placed randomly at the start of the game. When you place your villager on it, so you're deploying it on a specific space, if there's an icon for one of the seasons, you get to bump up these season tracks. And the season tracks have a scoring token. And I think there are something like 15, maybe more. I don't even know. But there are all these different ones. You're only going to play with 4 per game. So these are multipliers. Like in our game, we had, there was one season track that for each card you have in your ecosystem, up to a max of 8, you could, if you got to the top of this track, get 6 points per. So up to 48 points from that. But you have to, again, time out, like working your way up that track and building up your ecosystem. So there are all these other things that are going to like add a lot of like variability to the game. So overall, like I thought it was like really, really cool. It kind of surprised me, but it's very, very challenging. So if you're someone who likes games that where like the rules aren't that bad, especially after you played it once, it's like, okay, I put a person out, we move some things. Oh, can I buy a card? Put a card out. Sure. Like it's pretty simple, but like trying to do everything well is extremely challenging. And I will put a warning out because one of my minor gripes with the game is the board. So I love the look of the board because it's just pretty and kind of psychedelic, but everything, especially when you play it for the first time, so just be patient when you play this for the first time, is very small. And we were like constantly like, where can I find this? Where do I look for this? Where, because the icons for these paths, which is a lot of the game, as you're doing these pilgrimages, they're small and it's kind of like hard to see because it's so chaotic looking. So I almost wish they would have put some of the tracks, like the resource track, as a separate board, and then just made the main board a little bit bigger so it's easier to spot everything. And of course, now that I've played it once I'll be able to teach it better. And I now know, like, okay, yeah, you need a card, you go up here. You need this, you go down here. This is this monster or creature, But the icons are very small, and that made it like even like a little more challenging to kind of get into it. But again, I know publishers have to make choices, just like the thin cards in Kutná Hora. You have to make choices as to what you're gonna do. I'm sure that was probably a debate for them to figure out like what size to make the board and how to fit everything on there. But I will say that was just like a little bit challenging for us when we were playing. And I think it'll get less challenging, but the game is fantastic. And it surprised me. I thought it was going to be good, but like I was like, oh, wow, this is like really, really neat. Also, they're just like a lot of colors. So all the creatures are different colors. So they do look different and have different shapes and everything. So that's good. But it's a lot to kind of process.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is Arborea.
Very cool.
Yeah, have you heard of that one, or did you see that one at all?
I think I've seen it out there. There's so many games coming out. It's interesting you're talking about really liking the variable end game, and that's a thing that exists in both of the games that I talked about too. I really appreciate like feeling like you have a little bit of control of like you can rush it if you're doing well, or try and backpedal a little bit if you're not, and try and catch up.
Yeah. It's very cool. And actually, we had to go to a Halloween party over the weekend, so we were like, all right, we gotta finish this game. So everybody needs to start attracting creatures.
right.
Because it can get thinky. But yeah, that's like I said, I definitely would say that for people who like Zulkin and those games where you know, very thinky, where you have to kind of, you know, anybody can kind of play it and do okay and just go through the motions of, oh, put a worker here, move the track, take a worker off, do this pilgrimage, boop, 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 trigger these things. Like, that's all very simple, you know, but it's just trying to like figure out how to do it well to eke out the most victory points or regeneration points. But yeah, cool game. So like, and both that and Kutná Hora, like, they're both games where again, players are driving, like, it's so interactive because players are driving so much of what's going on, like what resources are available, which creatures are available. Oh, somebody moved this track. Now I can take this worker off, and I didn't think I was going to do a pilgrimage this soon, but now I can, you know? Anyways, that's Arborea. And now, a word from our sponsor. Days of Wonder is taking you on an unexpected and wonderful journey with Ticket to Ride Legacy, Legends of the West. In the booming 19th century America, you'll lead your railroad to success while experiencing a Ticket to Ride adventure like never before. Completing tickets remains the main goal. However, surprises and events will unfold along the way. Each player begins their journey with their own train company and train figures, and will add more content through player choices, exploring new game boards, and opening frontier boxes. To be successful, you'll need to develop your skills and fill your vault with earnings across the 12-game campaign. Ticket to Ride Legacy is a competitive game for 2 to 5 players aged 10 and up, designed by Rob Davio, Matt Leacock, and Alan R. Moon. You won't need to wait long to begin your adventure. It's available in retail stores everywhere on November 3rd. Okay, so it is family-friendly game time, Elizabeth.
Yay.
And you picked this topic, which I thought was great, especially, you know, given that we're about to hit November. But do you, like, I guess without getting into your list specifically, do you have a way of like kind of determining what games would be a good fit to introduce to family and lighter gamers or non-gamers?
That's a good question. Yeah, and family for me spans everyone from like my friends' kids through like my parents who are 80-ish. And not board gamers at all. My mom still has never finished a game of Wingspan. She doesn't have the attention span.
Yeah,
she has a little trouble wrapping her head around all the things.
I get that. Like, you know, to us, it's like, it doesn't seem that complicated, but like it can be a lot, you know? Oh, I will tell you, I have a friend, I'm trying to remember if it's my friend Tim or one of my friends, his parents play Wingspan almost every night. And I'm like, that's so cute. Oh, yeah. Like, so they found, I mean, but his parents might be like, you know, like might have played more board games or just might be able to process more than your mom, maybe, you know?
Right.
But, yeah. You have to make like a super intro scenario for her of that. So she can play like a 2-round game or something.
We play as a team.
There you go.
Yeah. But I feel like the whole experience of trying to teach Wingspan to birders too has been very educational to me and like reminding me about where a lot of people are starting, of like the idea that you have a choice of what to do on your turn blows some people's minds because they've only ever like rolled dice and done what the dice tell them to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, but that is not to say that I go with roll and moves when I'm trying to introduce easy games. So my list is sort of games that I really enjoy playing, but that are not complicated. They're also like not super competitive. Like, you don't care too much who wins. It's just kind of a fun activity half the time. One of mine doesn't actually even have scoring conditions, so it's arguably, people would argue whether it's a game or not. But I treat it like it's a thing we do in the slot that we would play a game.
Cool. I didn't like put my list in any kind of order, but I was just kind of thinking of. Well, there's one game on my list which it'll be the first one I mention, which is something that I was actually introduced to. I forget how old I was, but at a family gathering, one of my great aunts would have family over like the Monday after Christmas every year. And it'd be just kind of like catch up, hang out. Some people would exchange gifts, and then we would play games. And this game, really, I loved it. And I don't play it often. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but so I have like a game like that on there, and then I have games that I today think of, like if we're gonna be hanging out with Matt's family or my family or just a group of friends at a brewery or something, like, what would I try to sneak in there that I would enjoy playing, like you're saying, and also that people can catch on to easily, and just something fun forward.
Yep.
Cool. Well, do you want to start off with your first game on your list?
Sure. And these are likewise not in any particular order, but the first one that came to mind is definitely the first one that comes to mind for me, which is Just One, which came out in 2018. So it won the Spiel the year that Wingspan won the Kenner Spiel. So that it will forever have that little link
That's
to
so
me
cool
as well. But I also legit think that this is just like a party game that everybody should play. And you can play it with anyone who can read and write. I have even played it with kids who cannot read and write yet, and they just confer, they have to team up with someone and confer about how to write the words.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so the premise for anyone that hasn't played it is that there's someone who's trying to guess a word that everyone else knows. The words are all on cards. And everyone has a little dry erase board, and you write one word on your dry erase board that's a clue to the person who's guessing. But if any of the two clue givers write the same word or sort of a cognate of the same word, they cancel each other out. So something that seems like it's going to be easy can end up being really hard because the guesser only gets a couple of really obscure clues that maybe are
don't really fit well. Yeah,
don't work without the thing that got canceled. And it's just really fun. So you sort of try to be clever and think of like the next level clue that's not going to cancel out, but then multiple people are doing that. And so, it's just great. And it's by Ludovic Rowdy and Bruno Saute. I think they're French. I think that's how you would say it. And I remember talking to them at the prize ceremony in Berlin, and they were saying this was a game that they designed to play with their parents and in-laws and like people who are not gamers.
That's cool.
Because those guys have also designed like some heavy games.
Yeah.
And they wanted a game to play to be able to say like, I designed this and I can play it with people who aren't gamers. So it's great. It appeals to everyone I've ever played it with. And you are not limited to the number of players in the box. I will point out, we have played it with like 13 people and you just like give the extra people paper and pens and it gets zany because you get all the cancellations. So like sometimes it'll all work out and the guesser will get, 10 clues. But a lot of times there's still like down to 2 or 3 clues, even with that many people.
Yeah, I heard there's some people who will get 2 boxes of it too, so that you have 2 sets of the dry erase markers.
Yeah.
Just One is fantastic. And it's like, it's a game you can kind of take anywhere. I don't even think I've ever, like, we'll keep track of which cards we get correct, but like nobody's like really keeping score. You just want to keep playing it. And
like the rules are that you're supposed to play 13 turns and like keep track, and there's a like, oh, you did great or you did not so good, but no one does that. And we usually play, all the way around the table once or twice or however many until people are ready to move on.
Yeah. Same here. Great pick. Yeah. Just One. Cool. Okay. So the game that I was talking about is a super old game that I played at my great aunt's for the first time, I don't know, years ago. And actually, when I don't remember, maybe when I got my first apartment, I was like, oh, I want to get that game. And I couldn't even remember the name of it. But it is a game that is an open outcry real-time commodity trading game that's been around since 1903, and it's called Pit. Yeah. Pit is designed by Edgar Sayce, and also listed as designers are Harry Gavitt and George S. Parker from Parker Brothers. And my version that I have is Parker Brothers, but I think it's been around since 1903, so there are lots of different publishers listed. This game can be played with 3 to 8 players, and it is an absolute hoot. You have a deck of cards, so you'll have 9 cards of each of 7 different types of commodities. So like corn, flax, wheat, hay, I think. I don't remember all of them. But they all have a value ranging from 40 to 100. So like all of the flax cards are 40, all of the wheat cards are 100, and everything else kind of falls in between. Plus, you have a bull card and a bear card, which I'll talk about them in a bit, but they add a little spice to the game. So you deal all the cards out to all the players, and there's a bell too. There's some versions of it that don't come with the bell, but I had the version that I got is like a tin box, and it has a bell. So whoever's like the starting player will just like ding the bell to pretty much like open the market. And then everybody starts like simultaneously trading. And you're just like, I got two, until somebody wants your 2 cards and trades you 2 cards. And you're trading sets. So you have to like, maybe I started with 4 wheat cards, so I really am looking for wheat, and I'm trying to trade out, like I had 2 corn. I want to get rid of those because I'm looking for that wheat. So I might say, I got two, and then somebody trades me 2 cards. Oh, it's not wheat. Now I'm trying to pass them back. Maybe it's something I had. So now I got 3, So everybody's doing this at the same time, and you're trying to be the first one to corner the market on one commodity, meaning you have all 9 cards of one type of commodity. Then you ring the bell and you've cornered the market and you won the round. But they're also the bull and the bear card. So the bull card can be wild. So if you have 8 of one commodity and the bull card, you can ding the bell, and the bull will be wild and count as the 9th. But if you don't win, the bull is negative points, and then the bear is negative points all the time, and it's more negative points, I think, than the bull is. So it's like the worst card. You do not want to be stuck with the bear. And it's the most funny thing when you have the bear, you start with the bear and you pass it to somebody in a trade, and you just like watch their face across the table as you see them pick it up and realize, but they're trying to keep cool, right? They don't want people to know that they just got the bear because they want to now trade it to someone else. And it's just so funny. And meanwhile, as the original bear passer, I'm watching to see where the bear goes so that I don't accidentally take it back. And it's just this like really simple to teach and learn game that's exciting, wild, chaotic, and fun. And I'm going to tell you, it's even hilarious just sitting out. Like there was one time I was at a family reunion and we were playing it, or there were too many of us. So I was like, I'll sit out this game, and I just watching people play Pit and watching the bear as people pass it around is just the funniest thing ever. So I have not played Pit for a while. I still own it. It's still like if I were to break it out any night this week, it would still generate so many laughs. And I don't know. I just think it's like, it's kind of a banger, you know? So you played it a bit, I presume?
Yeah, I haven't played it in years, but I have this copy that I picked up at a thrift store that's like, I don't know, the graphic design is so mid-century. I don't know when the copy is actually from, but it looks like it's from like the early 60s.
Wow.
Oh, it's amazing. But it also makes me a little reluctant to play with it, you know?
Yeah, because it's like a collector's item at this point. Right. That's cool.
And it's not a calm game, right?
Oh, yeah. People are going to be, oh, man. And this was before my day of sleeving cards and everything.
Yeah.
I don't even want to open my pit tin and see what those cards look like.
Right. Maybe I should sleeve it. Maybe that would get it to the table.
There you go. But yeah, it's just, again, very simple and but just like if you like wild and chaotic games, Pit is a banger. And yeah, there are lots of different versions, and you don't need the version with the bell, but I like the bell.
Yeah,
you can always get a bell. You can always get a bell some other way.
Yes. Right.
So that's Pit. What's your next game, Elizabeth?
So my next game is the one that I was talking about that doesn't even have a scoring.
Okay.
But it's something that we have been playing every year at Thanksgiving for years in my family and with my friends. And sometimes we break it out at other times too, but it's because we often have like 10 to 16 people at Thanksgiving.
Gotcha, yeah.
It's something that everyone can do together. So this game, I learned it as telephone Pictionary in the 80s or 90s. I don't know. Long ago. It is on BGG as Eat Poop You Cat.
I think I've seen
I'll
this.
explain why in a minute. It is the game that Telestrations ripped off.
Oh.
So Telestrations existed before Telestrations, and it was this game.
Cool. I did not know that.
Yeah. So you can buy Telestrations, and it comes with dry erase things and whatever, and it organizes your little drawing, whatever. Or you can just hand everybody a sheet of paper and a pencil.
Nice.
And Telestrations gives you a word to start with. I think there's a deck of cards. I don't know. I sort of refuse to play it on principle because I like this one better. In my folk game that I grew up playing, everyone starts with a sentence. I've heard other people grew up where you always start with a quote or a song title or something. I think it's better to be able to just randomly make stuff up, because if it's a quote that people recognize, then it doesn't go wrong in the way you want it to go wrong.
Gotcha.
So the first person writes their sentence at the top of, or everybody simultaneously writes a sentence at the top of a sheet of paper. And then they pass it to the next person. And then you fold that sentence backwards so the next person after you can't see it. And on your second turn, you're going to draw a picture that tries to represent the sentence that someone wrote. So then you've folded the words back. All the next person gets when you pass it
is your picture.
And then they write a sentence that they think describes is a sentence that could have led to that picture.
Yeah.
If you're playing well, you might intentionally misinterpret some things. And then, so you've written the sentence, you fold back the picture, you pass again, you have received a sentence, you draw a picture, fold back the words, and so on. So if you're playing with like 7, 8, I think you want to have like at least 7 or 8 people so that you have time for things to get really misinterpreted and very far off. And so the name Eat Poop You Cat on BGG comes from the fact that someone playing this, started with some completely other sentence, and the final sentence was Eat Poop You Cat.
So is that like a new version of yours, or is it like kind of a Telestrations remake, or the Eat Poop?
No, it's a game I was playing in the early 90s.
Okay, so but
just
nowadays
a folk
they're calling
game
it
that got passed around. Yeah.
No.
don't know
I
when
mean the
Telestrations was
Eat
published.
Poop You Cat version. Is that?
I think that's a name that somewhere somebody started calling it, but the version that's on BGG as Eat Poop You Cat is the version that I grew up playing.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I just knew it by a different name.
That's cool. And how did you say how far it dates back to? I forget.
I should look that one up. I didn't. Let's see. Eat Poop You Cat on BGG says uncredited designer, public domain publisher, and it doesn't look like anyone put a year on it either.
No year.
It's just a folk game. I don't know how far back it goes, but at least the early 90s when I was playing it at like Unitarian camps.
Okay, all right. Eat Poop You Cat. That's cool. Yeah, I've only played I used to have I think the Telestrations After Dark version, and I played it a couple times. For whatever reason, that one didn't like ever really stick with me. I don't know what it was, but I passed that one on to friends who love it. Just
interesting.
Yeah.
Is that one also single words? I think the difference between single words and whole sentences is just huge.
Yeah, maybe that was it. Yeah. I gotta try your version. My next game on my list is and this is a straight Mama Harris one. So this is a game that I introduced to my mom during the pandemic, and I kind of introduced it to myself then too on a Board Game Arena, and eventually bought her the physical version, and then she got my brother kind of hooked on it as well. And it is a push your luck dice game called Can't Stop.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Can't Stop is a game from 1980 by Sid Saxon. It has many publishers, but the most recent version is Eagle Griffin Games. It only plays with 2 to 4 players, so it's not going to be like a big family event kind of game. But it's, again, a push your luck dice game where you're going to be rolling 4 dice on your turn, and you're going to combine them into 2 sets, and you're going to total each set to figure out which tracks you want to move up on this board. And this board has tracks going from 2 to 12, I guess, and the tracks are varying lengths based on the probability of rolling certain numbers. Like the 2 track and the 12 track are much shorter than the 7 track. The 7 track is the longest because there's, odds are, and just the combinations that you can make 7s are more frequent. But yeah, you roll your 4 dice, you figure out which 2 tracks you're going up, and you can keep rolling. But the push your luck aspect of it is you can only go up 3 different tracks on a given turn. So if you ever keep rolling, and then, let's say you've started moving up 3 different tracks, you ever keep rolling and you cannot make a result that'll let you legally move up one of the 3 tracks you've already moved up, you bust and you lose all of your progress. You don't get to stamp it in. So I think I learned this on Board Game Arena during the pandemic when we were just trying to let's play a game together online, and this looks easy. I'm pretty sure that's I don't remember if someone taught me or if we just were looking for something easy on Board Game Arena and discovered it. But my mom loves dice and pushing her luck, so it just became a hit. We would play maybe every other week. We get on and play Can't Stop. And again, I ended up buying her the physical version, which she loves to play. And then my brother loves it. Their eyes just light up when they're rolling the dice. And it's exciting. It's simple. It's exciting. So I had to put that on the list because I think it's a good one to get all sorts of family into board games together. And just as an alternate dice game I was going to throw on, because I was just thinking my family, they like dice games. They like Farkel and Spicy Farkel and everything. So another one.
Spicy Farkel.
Do you know about Spicy Farkel?
No, I know Farkel.
Oh, no. Once you play Spicy Farkle, you will never play regular Farkle again, Elizabeth.
I mean, I don't think I will ever play Farkel again anyway. But
Touche. Touche. But Spicy Farkle is much more interesting. It's spicier.
All right.
But I was just thinking, like, I wanted to have a dice game on this list, and I think Can't Stop is a good one. But another one that I had introduced to my mom at some point was Las Vegas. And that's another like easy dice game where you have these like casino mats, and you put each round you're putting a certain amount of money at each casino mat, and when you roll your dice, you're assigning your colored dice of the same value to a certain card. And at the end of the round, after everybody's placed all their dice, whoever has the most dice on a card is going to like win that money. So it's got this like really like Vegas-y vibe to it. And again, it's dice rolling and fun and light. So that's just an alternate game I'm just sliding in there. That again is something like I know my mom enjoyed, and other like family members and like her friends that she's played with, they seem to like that one. But I had to put Can't Stop on there, you know. I'm assuming you played that a bit too, because it's a classic.
Yes. Every year at the gathering of friends, I enter the Can't Stop tournament, but I never make it past the first round.
How many people are in it?
Oh my God, it's huge.
I don't know how I've missed this.
You've missed it. It's usually towards the end.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
I have to look out for that. And
someone just brings like dozens of copies of Can't Stop. It's really fun. Just
that's cool. What's the next game on your list?
My next game is a dexterity game, which is another great leveler, I think. And I picked Junk Art.
Cool.
Which is very popular at my house. My friends' kids love it, but pretty much anyone can play it as long as they've got a relatively steady hand. It came out in 2016. It's Jay Cormier and Sun Fung Lim. I think it might be out of print, which if that's true, someone should pick it up and continue it. I think the pieces are expensive.
Gotcha.
It's like a relatively light game, but it has to be expensive because of the pieces, and there's a little bit of a mismatch there. But I love it. So there's all these different shapes of pieces, and there's like a repeating set of stuff across 4 different colors. You know, so there's a cylinder, and there's a wedge, and there's a flower pot, and a ball with one flat side, and long, some long skinny things and some very squat things. And there are about, I don't know, at least a dozen, maybe 20 sort of city cards, and each city is a different game that you can play with these pieces. And they all involve stacking the pieces. And sometimes you're going for the highest piece of art. Sometimes you're just trying to do things quickly without them falling over. It's a variety of different sort of stacking games. Some of them, and there's a set of cards that match. There's one card for each piece in the game. So some of them involve drawing cards and sort of assigning your neighbor to put this piece on their composition, which, you're going to pick the really hard ones.
Yeah.
Those sorts of things. So it can be quite interactive in that way. So the official rules are that you pick 3 cities, you play 3 different games with the pieces, and score across all 3 to see who won. I think it's just delightful. It's hard to take it too seriously, but there are some interesting decisions about how to build with these cockamamie.
That's cool
pieces. Yeah,
I've actually never played it, but I've heard nothing but great things about it, and I think maybe it might be out of print, because I think I looked into getting it at some point when somebody was kind of talking about it. I was like, oh, this sounds really fun. But yeah. Cool. Junk art. It almost reminded me of when you were initially talking about just like the pieces. Have you played the game Natsugawa? is it called Nuts a Go-Go or Nuts a Go?
I keep hearing about it.
Yeah, that's a fun game because it's got like all these different like different shaped wooden pieces, and at the start of the game everybody has like, you'll have a cup and everybody just fills your cup as much as possible, and then the minute like one person says I'm done filling my cup, then it kicks off the timer where everybody else has to kind of wrap up filling up their cups. So then you have this cup of all these different wooden bits, and whoever the first player is, they'll call out a bit and they'll say like small barrel. And so they'll take a small barrel and drop it, and then everybody has to go and take a small barrel. And if you ever get stuck and then the next player would call something like diamond. I don't remember what the shapes are, but like then everybody has to follow and be able to take that out of their cup. And if you ever get stuck with not being able to like follow and have that piece that someone calls out, you lose. And that's all it is you keep going out till somebody there's only one person standing. But it's very like simple and silly and quick and fun. So that actually you're not really like building anything. It's more of like grab all this stuff, and then you're kind of almost playing a must-follow trick-taking game where if you can't follow, you're eliminated from the round. So you're trying to get like a variety of things, but you can only fit so much in your little cup, and yeah, it's cool. That was a little side segue, but that's not my next game. Bonus game. My next game was actually the last one I decided to add on the list on kind of a whim, because it's just something I randomly picked up at Essen that I knew nothing about. I was at the Matago Games booth and I was picking up a couple of card games, and someone walked up to me and was like, "Oh," and pointed at this game and said, "Oh, you should get that. That's fun." And I was like, okay, it's a small box. Sure. I'll trust you, random guy. Thanks. So I bought this game called How Dare You? And it's a 2023 release designed by Rodrigo Riga. And it's published by Alien by Dr. O, which is a publishing company run by Christian Osby, who's the designer of Escape the Curse of the Temple, and one of the designers of Revive, and one of the designers of Santa Maria. And also the other person who's in the publishing company is Ketel Svensson. It's 1 to 10 players, really like any number of players can play. And it is literally a deck of cards, and it's trivia. So you'll take the card deck out and just shuffle them or whatever and grab a card. One player's going to read a question. And the top of the card will have like a category, and then there'll be like 6 questions. So you might say, Elizabeth, give me a number 3. Okay, cool. I'll read the question number 3. So, there are all sorts of trivia questions, and the person whose turn it is going to get to guess first. And you're trying to guess a number that's as close to the right answer as possible without going over. Because if someone thinks you went over, they're going to challenge you or dare you. So, maybe I say, how many board games has Elizabeth Hargrave designed is the question. And, I say 2 as the first player. And then the next player clockwise will get to guess. They could either challenge me or they can guess thinking, no, I think it's higher than that. So they guess. Maybe they say 10. And so the next person can either, again, say something higher, or they can dare and say, no, I don't believe, I think you went over. And if you challenge them, that's when you flip over the card and see what the correct answer is. And if they were incorrect, or whoever got it wrong pretty much is going to keep the card. And it has these little silly goose points on it at the top. And so you keep the card. You don't want silly goose points. Nobody wants to be the silly goose here. And then you play, you play as many rounds as you want. And then whoever has the most silly goose points is the loser, and all other players win. But this is the kind of game like Just One or something like that. Not cooperative, but like where you're not really playing it for the scores. So we just find ourselves breaking it out like one of our dinners we went to at Essen, I brought it along because it's so small and it's just like something entertaining. It's a deck of cards, and you just...
How does it compare to Fun Facts? Have you played that one?
Fun Facts. Is that the game where you have you dry erase, you write your answer, and then you slot it in
and then you're trying to put them in order, which is what made me think of it.
That is a good comparison. Well, number one, you don't have the slotted. It's more just like live. Like you don't, it's less components. So it's just literally one person says something and then you're not like stacking kind of in relation to each other. You're literally going just around the table, to see do you think this is higher than the answer or what is your guess that you think is better, and then you just keep doing that until somebody busts. But I guess it does have like a similar, and Fun Facts is cooperative, right? Because we're trying to we're trying to position ourselves in relation to each other, if I recall.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I thought about putting it on my list, but I've only played it once or twice and it's been a while.
Yeah, because I think with Fun Facts, after everybody writes their guess, and in that game, just for context, like you're basically, you'll have some kind of trivia question, and one person, whoever the first person is, will write an answer, and they will put their dry erase board on the table. Then the next player has to slot theirs where they think it's either higher or lower than that person. And then everybody does that until they're all there. And then I think the first player can, at the end of it, adjust theirs one more time after they see what everyone else does. But but for each one that doesn't go in ascending order is basically bad. You're trying to, I think it's cooperative and you're trying to get it in the right order together.
And I think most of them are not trivia. They're like
personal questions.
Yeah.
How many times a month do you go out to dinner? Was like one of them.
There isn't a correct answer that you're trying to
approach.
It's that you're putting everyone's
there we go. We got it.
We got it. There we go.
Yeah, because this one, how dare you, is actually trivia. Like there was a question, and because it's 2023, like there was a question about how many active users were on Twitter like before Elon Musk took over or something like that. Like there was something that recent. Like, there was one for cats where it was like, what's the average amount of whiskers on a cat? So, yeah, so it is kind of cool because you can learn random facts. Like, in case anybody was wondering what I think it was the human card, how many farts per day or how many times per day does the average person fart or something like that was a question. And my friend Cassie, who we often joke is a Cylon, if you know Battlestar Galactica, basically a robot, she says 14. And guess what? She was exactly right. Like,
wow.
Yeah, but now we know that. Now we know that fact. Yeah. For better or for worse, we know that. But yeah, so this one is kind of cool because you do like, it's real trivia, so you will like start to remember these random facts. I think the amount of cat whiskers was like 24.
All right.
Yeah.
That's higher than I would have guessed.
Yeah.
Sure.
But anyway, I brought this game, it's just fun to take along if you're waiting in line for something. If like we were at our friend's daughter's birthday party and we were like just about to say bye to everyone, and I didn't get a chance to get any games in with anybody. So I was like, oh, Matt loves this game too. So I was like, let's do a couple questions, and then so there were like 6 adults of us like in a circle, like doing these trivia questions, and it gets addicting. You want to keep doing one, like, oh, my turn. Let me guess. So yeah, it's just like a little social game. Again, we weren't really like playing it as the game where you're getting shamed if you're getting silly goose points, but we're not keeping count to see who has the most. So that was just kind of a random pickup and something that I wouldn't have thought would have been on this list, but when I think about it, it's something like I'll bring back when we go to visit family in Philly in December. And yeah, and it's just something that, like, again, at little different social events, I'll probably have in my bag with me just in case, there's a dull moment and we need to learn some interesting facts. So that is How Dare You. What is your next game? We got 2 more, right?
Yeah. My next one is the one game that my parents have gone out and bought for themselves after I introduced it to them.
Ooh, I'm curious.
Who, again, they are not gamers at all. But it's Illusion by Wolfgang Warsch.
Yeah.
Which came out in 2018. I don't know who the original publisher was. Pandasaurus has the US license. And so this game has a set of cards. It's just, like 100 cards. And each one of them has a graphic on it that has some component of sort of having an optical illusion. Like it might throw you off a little bit. As I explain, it'll make sense why. But there's, I think, 4 colors in every drawing. And on the back of the card, which you cannot see while you're playing until you turn it over to find out whether you were right or not. On the back of the card, it has the percentage of the surface area of the card that is made up by each color.
Yeah.
And so these drawings are like intentionally throwing you off that you're going to think that one thing has way more or way less than it actually does. And on your turn, well, at the beginning of a round, you put 1 card out, and then each person takes a turn drawing a card and deciding where it fits in the lineup. Yeah. Kind of like we were just talking about with fun facts or like with Timeline, if you've ever played Timeline. And so like and you declare for the round, we're looking at red for this round. Right. And so does this card have more or less red than all the other, like where does it fit in the lineup? And then anybody on their turn can say, I'm calling it. I think something here is wrong. And they flip it over. And if they are correct and something was wrong, then they win the point. And if they're wrong and everything is in the correct order by how much red there is, then the person before them gets the point for having correctly placed their card. It's a little mind-bending. Yeah. So you don't feel dumb when you get it wrong because like they're intentionally misleading optical illusions on the cards. But the rules are just as simple as like I just taught the entire game. Right, there's nothing else to it. But it's just fun because you have these collective like, oh, is that right? Yeah. What's going on there? So it's very sort of a collective experience of puzzlement over these they're eye-pleasing illustrations, but they're a little mind-bending. Yeah, this is a good pick. I actually considered it because remember I said I only had a couple games on my main shelf that I would break out on such occasions, and I did skim over Illusion, and I thought about it, and I also thought about like the mind as something. Oh yeah, but Illusion has always been just kind of a banger. Like it's a lot of everyone I've introduced it to, like, we get super into it. And it's fascinating how you will think, oh, there's definitely more yellow on this than that. And then you find out, nope, you're wrong. And wrong by a lot, right? Yeah. Sometimes. Yeah. It is definitely mind-bending. But that's a good pick. And that's so cool that that's the game your parents were like, oh yeah, we want to play this more. That's awesome. So that's Illusion. So my next game is going to be super quick because we already talked about it, and it's Just One. For all the reasons you mentioned, like, Just One is just such a great cooperative party game. It's just so fun. You can take it camping. You can play it with just about anybody. Again, like even if you play with young kids who can't write, you can partner them up. And it's crazy how much you think about everything in that game because you're like, well, if the clue is spaghetti and you're like, well, is anybody going to pick pasta?
because maybe everybody thinks someone else is going to pick pasta, so no one's going to pick pasta, and we should have pasta. And you're like going through
and
this.
then you say tomatoes,
and everybody says tomatoes or something. Yeah.
Or it's a terrible clue without the context of pasta.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, Just One was my pick. And one of the things I learned when I was like looking up the designers and publisher and everything was that they originally, I think the year before, they had a game called We Are the Word that was published by Fun Consortium. And then that kind of became Just One. So yeah, same designers. I guess they just kind of maybe just made it re-implemented it in a better shape. But yeah, but that's really cool. And also in this category that I was thinking of, another thing that I was kind of contemplating putting on the list was Wits and Wagers.
Oh yeah. That's another trivia game where you don't have to actually know the answer to play the game.
Yeah, which I think is really cool, because then you can just kind of bet on what you think is right. You don't necessarily have to have the right answer. But yeah, it was like a couple years ago somebody introduced me to Wits and Wagers, and I was like, "Oh, this game is cool." Like I completely missed it, and that's something I'll get people as a gift. Some reason I've never actually owned it myself, but I really do like it. And I think like Matt's parents were looking to host a game night at some point, and I was like, get Wits and Wagers. I think I said get Just One also. But so yeah, my number 2 was going to be Just One. That's our Just One crossover. So what's the top game on your list?
They're not top. These are not ordered, but because Just One might have to take top.
Right. Okay. Top
position,
position too. Not necessarily favorite of the bunch.
Yeah, so I've been going back and forth, even as we've been talking about which Eric Slauson game to talk about.
Ooh.
He's got 2 drawing games. One is called Tattoo Stories, and one is called MonsDRAWsity.
Oh, I think I played, was that at Gen Con last year? Or is it older?
I think we might have played it at a gathering of friends. I don't know when it would have been at Gen Con. It originally came out in 2020, and then they kickstarted an expansion. I'm waiting on my copy, but I've played it a few times, and so MonsDRAWsity, the premise is that there's one person who gets to look at the drawing of a monster, and everyone else has a dry erase board and a marker, and the person looks at the monster but then has to put it down. So it's like a police sketch of the monster as described by the person who's it. And Eric was telling me the other day, I was at an event with him, actually, we're sort of in the same metro area but far from each other, but he was saying he actually did quite a bit of research on like the whole concept of police sketches and how unreliable they are. And like how bad the human memory is. And then like how that has to get filtered through the artistic ability of the sketch artist. And like they're totally unreliable police sketches. And that comes across in this game because you get to look at the card and then you have to put it down and describe to everyone how to draw the monster that was on your card without being able to look at it. And I believe there's a time element that you have like X number of minutes to like give them all the details. And then there's a judging thing where the person who is describing gets to award a point, but also everyone else is sort of voting for who did it the best. And I forget whether that's before or after you get to actually look at the original drawing.
That's cool.
But it's just like, it's a drawing game where your drawing ability doesn't really matter because it's all mediated by the fact that someone's telling you what to put where. And
right.
And none of it quite makes sense.
Okay, so I'm trying to think if this is the game that I played, and it was either, how many times have I gone to Gen Con now? Was this? I don't remember, but there was one Gen Con. I was walking around with Eric from What's Playing, and we were by a booth that had a sheet where everybody could come up and draw with crayons. And I remember drawing monsters. So I wonder if this is it, or if there's
Maybe
something else. I think
some
it is.
other monster drawing game.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it is. That's super cool. Wait, what was the other game you were mentioning? The tattoo one.
So Tattoo Stories. Someone's it and draws a whole set of cards, and these are like the elements that they want in the tattoo that everyone else has to design for them. So again, it's like drawing on a dry erase board. And so I might need to put in a skateboard and Santa Claus and wine, and and the person who's it can put some effort into describing why they want these things in their tattoo or not.
That's cool.
Give people guidance about what they want, and then everyone else has a certain amount of time to draw a sort of coherent tattoo design, and then pitch it to the person who's it. And the person who's it can hand out the cards that had the words on them as points, right? But
that's cool.
They're not, again, you're not taking the points super seriously. It's all just about seeing the funny designs that people make when they were all given the same set of prompts.
Very cool.
That one, I feel like drawing ability does come into play a little more maybe than in MonsDRAWsity. But for people that are all sort of above a certain level, it's super fun to see what people come up with.
Very cool. Very cool. So the last game on my list, you had 2 drawing games. That was pretty.
I guess so.
That was pretty good.
Yeah.
And then, I was also thinking,
draw.
good call on the dexterity game, because dexterity games are really good. So my the last game on my list is Insider. And Insider is a 2016 release from Oink Games. So small box. Love that. It's designed by Ikiro Ito, Kwaji, Daichi Akano, and Kito Shimna. It plays with 4 to 8 players. So this is, again, a good one for slightly bigger groups. And it's basically 20 questions with a twist. So at the beginning of the game, players are going to secretly and randomly get assigned roles at the start of the round. And one player is going to be the master. Most players are going to be commons. And one player is going to be the insider. And what's going to happen is the master will immediately say, okay, I'm the master for the round. So we all know who the master is. We don't know who anybody else is. And there's a deck of cards, which is kind of clever, that they have, I think, numbers on the back. So basically, the master will ask everyone to close their eyes. The master will flip the top card on the deck, and there will be maybe 5 or 6 words or clues. And then whatever number is on the top card of the deck that hasn't been revealed is the number that they're going to try to get people to guess for the round. So so basically, if the card that I'm looking at has 5 options, I don't remember how many, and then the other card, the back of the deck, says 2, number 2 is going to be what I need to get people to guess this round. So then I'll close my eyes. I don't know why I'm all of a sudden the master, but the master will then close their eyes, and they'll have the insider open their eyes. So now the insider is going to get to see what the word is. Or the phrase. I don't remember if this is just one word or phrases or names, or I don't remember exactly. But they're going to get to see the answer. Then the master is going to have the insider close their eyes, and then the master is going to open their eyes and put the card back on the top of the deck. Now, going around, starting with the player to the left of the master, everybody gets to ask a yes or no question. And we're just firing off questions. Oh, there's one other thing. There's a sand timer. So you flip the timer, and now everybody's asking questions. One question. If you don't have something, you pass. You keep going. So everybody is trying to guess the answer before the sand timer runs out. If we don't all guess the answer, or someone doesn't guess the answer before the sand timer runs out, we all lose the game. So remember, the insider knows the answer. So they're going to be carefully steering people if people aren't like kind of getting it themselves. Maybe ask a certain question that maybe triggers other people to ask questions. And so, okay, timer's running out. Oh, all of a sudden someone says, is it a basketball? And then the master's like, yes, it was a basketball. So now whatever time is left on the timer, the sand timer flips. And now everybody has to guess. Well, the master and the commons have to guess who the insider is. If they guess who the insider is, the insider loses and everybody else wins. If they don't guess who the insider is, the insider wins. So as the insider, you're kind of playing against everyone, but we all need to like guess correctly in order to like all win. But you want to be really subtle about how you're, maybe again, like, but as the sand timer is running out, like sometimes the insider is just they're going to be the one that says the answer. So whoever says the answer is usually off the bat pretty sus. It's like, oh, Elizabeth, yeah, where'd you come from with basketball, And then if you are the insider, then you're going to be like, oh, well, Johnny over here said something and that reminded me of this, you're trying to like make people think you're not the insider. So it's a really cool little game because, again, it's a very small box. You can take it anywhere. You can teach it relatively quickly. I know like one of our set of friends, they borrowed, I don't remember if they borrowed my copy or after they played it with me, they bought their own, but they played it at a family gathering, like a trip. They all went away and their mom like went nuts for it. And she does not like any games. And she just like had such a blast. Because it's like, most people know 20 questions. All you're doing is just asking a question. You're trying to figure something out together. Yeah. But there's that twist of like, who is the insider? So, so anyway, I like it quite a bit when I can remember to pack it with me. That's another one that's like really small and good with like, 5-6 players. I don't know if I've ever quite gotten it up to 8, but and I can't recall if there are like 2 insiders if you play with like up to 8 players or something. It might be something like that. I don't remember. I feel like I usually play it with like 5 or 6. But yeah, that's Insider and highly recommend it. It's if that any of that sounded fun to you, check it out. So you've never played it before, huh?
No, I hadn't even heard of it.
Yeah, so maybe this is one you need to pick up before Thanksgiving and see how it fares with the old family there. Anyway, I really kind of like struggled with thinking of this list initially, and then then certain things were like, oh well, I gotta mention that, But I loved hearing your picks, and especially the last one, like the drawing one, and junkyard, right? Or junk art. Yeah, those sound like I really want to check them out, and I've heard nothing but great things about junk art and everything. I also was thinking about like card games. Like I played this game called Romi Rami, which I talked about on episode 24 of the BGG podcast, which I think is a great but that's again a 2 to 4 player game, but great little card game that's kind of based off of Rummy, but a little more modern. And I almost put that on the list because I think card games can be good like that too with family. It's something most people can relate to. You grow up playing cards, and I feel like that one has like this nostalgia factor to it, but it's still fun and interesting for gamers. But anyway, it was great talking to you, Elizabeth, as always. I'm glad we picked this topic / you picked this topic because it was really fun to talk about with you. And
I feel geared up for Thanksgiving already.
Yeah, I feel like I'm getting geared up. Although my Thanksgiving crew, I'm going to throw some slightly heavier things at them because they know how I roll. They know how I roll.
That's usually the day after Thanksgiving for me. We get in some meatier stuff.
Oh, okay, cool. It's I try to do both. But yeah, usually on Thanksgiving Day, I'll try to I think, did we get Ready Set Bet in? Have you played Ready Set Bet?
Oh, that's another
good one. I was just thinking it's a little more challenging. It's a
little more complicated.
Yeah, it's a little more complicated.
I wouldn't make my mom play Ready
Right.
Set Bet. That's like my metric.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I think you would have to kind of water it down a little bit to ease some people in, but that's a great, if people can handle some lighter games, that's a good one for big groups. But yeah, this is lots of great ideas, and I'm gonna try to pick some of these up, and also I look forward to hearing comments on BGG from other people of things we didn't mention that other people play, because it is always really cool to discover games that you can play with anyone, aka family who doesn't play games, and it's also fun for you. There's a sweet spot there. So I'm looking forward to seeing you at PAX Unplugged and checking out Undergrove. And I'll catch you soon. Thanks again.
Sounds good. Yeah. See you soon.
You've been listening to the Board Game Geek podcast, produced and edited by Candice Harris. Special thanks to Matt Fonda for editing and mixing our music. Be sure to visit us on the web at BoardGameGeek.com. You can also find us on YouTube, Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and Twitch under Board Game Geek. You can reach us by email at podcast@BoardGameGeek.com. Thanks for listening, and